Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. I was thinking today that it's easy to underestimate the number of people around the world that are dedicated to helping others improve and understand the deeper processes of their lives. In particular, I'm referring to mediums, psychics, astrologers, and numerologists. We are the spiritual interpreters, if you'd like to think of it, the interpreters that feel things that go beyond the realm of everyday perception. And as I've stated before, I believe that all people are psychic and that everyone could develop themselves to a mediumship level if they wished, but most of you don't. And those of us that do really love the work that we do. And this show is dedicated to showing what life looks like from our perspective, from the perspective of a medium, a psychic, astrologers, and numerologists, a numerologist perspective. And today's guest comes to you from the UK. She is a clairvoyant medium and psychic. She is also an astrologer. She's a writer and just a wonderful soul. Her name is Debbie Maya, and she also goes by the pen name Debbie Nagyoff. And I'll get her to correct any pronunciation errors that I've made, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about her before we get started. Debbie Maya is an internationally renowned clairvoyant. She has a specialty that's very interesting to most of us because she's been very skilled at reaching into the energies surrounding soulmate connections. And of course, that leads into past lives connections. She has worked as a writer, a journalist, broadcaster, and a professional astrologer. She got her diploma at the Mayo School of Astrology and has trained at the College of Psychic Studies in South Kensington, England. And for over 30 years, she's worked as a clairvoyant. She gives private readings face-to-face via Skype and email, over the phone, etc. And she is the author of some very interesting books, The Twin Soul Connection and Twin Flame and Other Soulmate Connections, and Familiar Strangers, Soulmates, Twin Flames, and their Astrological Synastry. And I found her particularly interesting as I sort of surfed the web looking at different profiles of people, because she has that ability to blend those two gifts together, her astrological training along with her natural and fully developed gift of mediumship and psychic ability. And so without further ado, I think I'll introduce her. If you want to check her out on the web while you're listening, often I know some of you like to look us up. Her name is Debbie, Debbie Nagyoff, Nagioff, Debbie Nagyoff, debbienagyioff.co.uk. You can find her on the web there. Welcome, Debbie. We're so happy to
Hi.
have you with us.
Hello. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is over there.
Mid-afternoon.
Mid-afternoon. Okay.
Yes. First of all, I want to make sure that I am pronouncing your name correctly, both of them.
Yeah.
Debbie Maya and
Yes.
Debbie Nagyoff.
Nagyoff.
Nagyoff. Okay.
Nagyoff. Yes.
My
Yes.
my
Yes.
my my bad.
That's okay.
Nagyoff.
That's
Okay,
okay.
thank you. And so you have that extraordinary combination of gifts. I love talking to other mediums and seeing how
Yeah.
they apply their trade. What has doing what you do given you in terms of a way to view the world? How do you see the world because of what you do that might be different than the
I
average?
think I think the answer is I think we have to be very aware of the grand plan, and that a lot of what the universe throws at us, we don't necessarily have control over. I'm one of these strange people who, when I've been fired from a job or I've been made redundant from a job, I kind of get exhilarated because
Change.
yes, change at last. And I've never been able to sort of get my feet under the desk and become too comfy in a somewhat mundane role, because sooner or later I get kicked up the backside. Howsoever that happens, maybe psychologically I engineer it, or subconsciously I engineer it. I don't know.
Do you think it's because you see people, as I do, a little deeper, and that can make people somewhat uncomfortable? Because
I
when
think
you
so.
understand what's behind the scenes, then you don't really buy into the bull.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one thing my mother taught me when I was very young was always to stick up for myself. So whereas people, they put a boss on a pedestal, I don't. I tend to talk to people in much the same way, because at the end of the day, we all go to the bathroom. We all have the same bodily functions, and the fact that somebody has a title doesn't necessarily mean much to me. And also, people have to earn respect. They shouldn't necessarily just be given it because they're head of something or other. And so I've always been like that, for better or worse. And I don't know why I've always been like that. I think we do see people's insecurities, and you can tell sometimes that people who are relaxed about being in a high profile job, that's great. They don't have to treat people underneath them as as
Minions.
rubbish. Yeah, minions, exactly. And
I celebrate that perspective too, and I think I learned it from my dad, because
yeah,
I always saw him speak to people equitably.
yeah,
And I and you both talk to people on this side and the other, soul to
yeah,
soul, but he
yeah,
used to speak to the janitor in the building the same way that he spoke to the president of the college, and that was a great
absolutely.
example to me of well, he's an Aquarius, so
Uh-huh.
it would make
That's it.
sense. Yes, and I just appreciate that, and I think that because we aren't necessarily blinded, it does kind of make people uncomfortable sometimes, although that's this very skill that our clients seek out, because we do see through the nasty mess
We
of
do, and
things.
we pick up on. I mean, I don't go around with my chakras open. Um, you won't
Right.
find me. You won't find me walking along Oxford Street, London, with my chakras open. I know some people like to do it, but you do pick
No,
up an
no.
awful lot of dross. And when I see clients, as soon as I have finished speaking with them, or they have come to consult me, whether it's via Skype or it's face to face, as soon as I'm finished, I zip everything up and I'm done. And that's no reflection on them, but I think you have to be disciplined in that way. It's my sort of
I agree.
Capricorn ascendant talking here, but you
Yeah.
have to, because it's otherwise you can get some awfully nasty attachments, which I've seen happen to a neighbour of mine. I live just north of the capital in London, and I live in a cul-de-sac, and there's about 3 or 4 of us, literally, who are all doing spiritual work. So I find that quite amazing. And
Yes.
my neighbour, as I say, she did when some years back, when she lost her father. She was so grief stricken that she just so desperately wanted to hear from him. and she left herself wide open to attack, and she got a rather nasty attachment, which was actually she had it removed by a guy who became it was a soul connection that came into her life. He sort of dealt with what I call the dark side of life. We don't really always want to go there, but
Well, there is duality in life.
yes, absolutely, and he was able to get rid of it. So um, I think you have to be very careful, and sometimes as a clairvoyant and medium, and I'm sure Tracy, you've had this happen, that busy chit chatting with somebody, and they'll say, do you pick up anything from me? And the answer is usually no, because I haven't consciously tuned
Right?
into them.
Because energy follows focus. And
Yeah.
and I think it's a sign of a natural medium that we have learned to regulate our energies. If we didn't learn when we first started, we certainly learned along the way. I know I teach psychic protection
Yes.
to my clients that are developing their mediumship, because
Yes.
it's sort of like you wouldn't go out in winter in Siberia without proper dress. You wouldn't go into
No.
the ethers without it. And I
Yeah.
think, what do you think on this? I know a few mediums, and this is not standard in the field by any means, but they use like alcohol to open their portal. To me, I would
Oh,
never
no, no,
do
no,
that, because that would be
no,
a disaster. Like
no, no,
yes,
no,
you
no, no,
agree, right?
no,
Not a
absolutely
cool
not.
way,
No,
not
no, I
cool.
don't. I don't really drink. That's number
Nope,
one.
I'm
But
not either.
certainly, I wouldn't. In fact, I don't read for people who are intoxicated.
Yes, good
Um,
point.
and about 7 years ago, I sort of teamed up with my cousin, who's a tarot reader, although now we've sort of gone our separate ways and do different types of work. But we used to hold a lot of psychic fairs in pubs, which was quite good, but I always used to say it's like the spirit meeting spirit, i.e., what they were consuming. And if
Right.
somebody was really pissed, I wouldn't read for them, because their energies are so muddled up. They can't get what you're
Right.
saying.
They
They
won't
can't.
remember
They
anyway.
won't remember. They can't.
And
They,
it's sacred. Like I mean, I'm not saying in a religious sense, but it's a
no,
very
no, you can't.
beautiful gift to connect people with other energies, and it's an art to it.
That's absolutely right. But you find that as you're talking to people who are highly intoxicated, before you've even opened your mouth, they're already shaking their head. No,
Yeah, yeah.
no,
I think of people that are under the influence of alcohol or drugs, sort of like, well, the example that I like to give is if you were to go to the eye doctor and
yeah,
they put the drops in your eye and it opens your pupil, you have to have that extra protection to go out in the sunlight, because if you don't, your sight will be damaged, and because your pupil is not able to constrict and close against rays that would be harmful
that's
otherwise.
true.
And so I think of it the same way in the spirit world, that our portals kind of get jammed open. And, people have used drugs and alcohol through the millennia to access spiritual experience, but they're
So called,
vulnerable,
yeah,
and,
yeah, they're
I
very
think they
vulnerable.
don't know that they can have that experience in a natural way through learning to discipline their energies and
I
quiet their
think what
soul.
happens is that they, as they get intoxicated, or they use drugs, or they're just smoking cigarettes, they get an altered state of consciousness, and they think that what they're picking up is indeed what they are, and it may or may not be, but certainly the clarity
They're not
won't be
shielded,
there. No, they're not
absolutely. And the
shielded.
energies don't sort themselves properly,
No.
because it is a lower vibrational way to access the spirit world.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we were talking slightly before the show, and of course, soulmates and twin souls, they're like the
Yeah.
buzzwords. Everyone's looking for one, or has had one, or wants them to show up. And we were talking about people's expectations. Let's talk about people's expectations. As a specialist, I'm sure that's something that sometimes
Yeah.
crosses my table, but
Yeah.
it's more so with you because you
All the
specialize in
time.
that.
Yeah.
What do you see with that? What would you give us some generalities about their expectations?
Well, people when they consult a clairvoyant or a psychic are generally in a situation that is causing pain, or they want clarity. And the thing is, first of all, it's the definition of what a soulmate is. I have this romantic view that, and so I've read as well, that our whole soulmate family came to Earth, and we will meet up with them periodically. I mean, they're our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters. These are all soul connections
Yes,
because,
yes, I adhere
you
to
know,
the idea, the concept of a soul
yeah,
group. I don't know if I think of it as a family, but I could see why that would
yeah.
be,
But
because we do play those roles in each
we do
other's
play
lives.
those roles. We also play mentors. We play, the university lecturer who we never forget, or who pushed us. And it's also, in my experience, people who we absolutely can't stand. And
Yes.
that may sound to some people like a bit strange, but I'll give you a for instance. A friend of mine was working for an attorney, and she was quite, happy. It was a bit boring, but it was within her. She was very comfortable there, and she also did tarot work. And what happened was, one day that they took on somebody else to work alongside her. Now, this girl, her job was to sort of kind of, she was like a line manager, if you like, to my friend. Um, and the two clashed like crazy, and it caused enormous ructions. And I said to my friend, look, why are you putting up with all this? I mean, and she wasn't young at the time. She was probably about, not even 60, but I mean, she wasn't like just starting out or anything.
Hmm.
And she said, oh, there's a principle here. And I said, well, what would you really like to do? And she said, I would really like to do my tarot on a full-time basis. So I said, so why are you putting up with this bull? And
Hmm.
she, I kind of gave her permission, if you like, to let it go.
Yes, sometimes that's what people need.
They
Like,
need the permission. They
I
need
believe in you. You can do it.
you can do it,
And
because I mean,
we've all needed that in our lives. I
we
have
have, we
too.
have. I
Yeah.
mean, because a lot of us come from backgrounds where, you hold on to a job until you find another one, and sometimes it doesn't happen, and you're putting up with an awful lot of stuff, and it does affect your health. In the end, she gave it up, and I said to her afterwards, this girl is a soul connection to you. And she said, oh, it's rubbish. I said, no, it's true, because her role was to push you onto another path. And
Yes.
now you're doing your tarot full time. If she hadn't come along, you'd probably still be at the same law firm doing the same old, and you wouldn't have been given the opportunity to develop your spirituality. And
Yes.
it happens. It does happen, and it feels terrible at the time. You've got a terrible boss, or you're in a terrible situation, or you're involved with a terrible partner. And it's there to show you something. And sometimes when we're in the thick of it, it's not so easy. It's not clear to see it. All you can just feel is the great pain. But I do, when I people consult me, I do try and get them, if it's at all possible, to take a step back mentally from what they're seeing or what they're experiencing, so that they can see it from a kind of, I suppose you could say, an aquarium point of view, a bit detached point of view,
Yes. Yes.
and
Excellent.
look at it like they're watching a television, and just see what is actually happening. Um, and it's sometimes it takes a great effort sometimes to see that, and we've all been through bad relationships or bad connections, and this is the universe's way of balancing karma. So you have to go through the horrible chap in order to meet somebody a bit better, because if you don't go through necessarily through somebody horrible who doesn't treat you very well, I'm not saying that everybody should, but I'm saying that I'm saying often we do. We go through somebody who doesn't commit, or they treat you badly, and so long as you learn the lesson, I don't really want to. I'm going to be very wary of going for somebody like that again.
Right. It helps us set our boundaries and know what it's the contrast that shows us what we do not want.
That's it.
So we can figure out what we do want.
Yeah. I mean, some people, they're always attracted to the bad guy, or the guy who's going to treat us badly. I often go, talk to clients about their early life, because I think a lot of answers are in the early life. How the parents were, if the parents had an unhappy connection, it can be reflected in the type, in who we choose as partners.
And going further back than that, it's kind of natural to go back into the past life connections.
Yes.
And, I think that's perhaps why it's so difficult to let go of a certain relationship, because maybe in a past life, you were that person's mother, or you were that person's brother, or you were you were the provider, the one that was supposed to take care of them, and perhaps things didn't end up too great. And so there's that past life confusion or something that comes in where, but I'm also like thinking that, if we have this soul group, wouldn't you rather your best friend in the etheric realm come down and play the bad guy in your life? Because you're being very vulnerable to come into the physical world. And so someone that is a mate, a soulmate up there, in the higher vibrational realm, who would you prefer to be that person in your life? Because
I don't know. It's almost as if in esoteric terms, we're all given a big box of clothes that we can dress up and say, okay, you can play my mum this time.
Yes.
And you treat me mean, and then I'll give you what for back, and then and then we can all switch around and play other parts later.
Yeah, like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, and all its players merely actors, or something along that lines.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, and that's it. And it feels like that sometimes, but you do recognize. I mean, I always ask clients when they meet somebody and they say, this is my twin soul. I always tend to think of the twin flame connection, and we don't all experience them. I think people who are very spiritually well along their path are more likely than people who are just starting out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And for those listeners that might not have ever distinguished between a soulmate and a twin flame, can you give us just a rough out on that?
Well, I think, first of all, when you meet your twin flame, it's unlike meeting anybody else. And that can be a blessing and it can be a curse at the same time, because I always feel that the penultimate meeting of the twin flames, and we do meet them all through various lifetimes, can be the most difficult, because where the problem comes is where you inevitably get one person who's far more advanced along their spiritual path and recognizes that twin flame. You look into their eyes, there's a lot of synchronicity that surrounds especially a twin flame connection. You find that you may have been in the same places at the same time, and all kinds of things. I mean, all kinds of different things. Obviously there's a lot of telepathy, but then you get that with with regular soulmate connections. But with the twin flame, there's a lot of synchronicity. There's a sort of a definite pattern of coming together, then separating, coming together, then separating. You get one person who's the runner, or just can't take it anymore, or because the intensity is so strong. And you have to, at some point, make a decision with it. I mean, invariably twin souls meet when one or other of them are involved with other people, and it's just not on for you to say to your twin soul, and then this is how you know it's not a twin soul. You've got to leave your wife, or you've got to leave your husband, or you've got to leave your boyfriend.
Not
because
cool.
It's not only is it not cool, but it creates all negative karma.
Yes.
And you think, well, I've got enough karma to deal with. I don't need more. Do me a favor.
Right, yeah. Exactly. When you do say twin flame, I know some people have described that as, a soulmate is someone in your soul group, and a twin flame is actually a single soul that has separated, sort of like a zygote in the uterus. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I tend to think it's somebody who has traveled within your, with you, directly with you, when you came, you arrived on the planet, or howsoever. I mean, you can put it in all different ways, but I think people are more interested in not the kind of the description, because people's descriptions tend to it's all human man-made type descriptions of how it is,
right?
And I think it's just the things you look out for are the synchronicities that happen around. You find you may have known this person 25 years ago, and they turn up in your life again, and the feeling is intense. It's so intense that you don't want to be in their company, and yet you want to be in their company. And so one of you runs, and there's a huge amount. You are literally connected as if you've got an electrical cord between you. You can feel that person.
I think it's interesting
what they're thinking, and even if they're hundreds of miles away, there's that sort of thing.
That empathic bond too. Yeah, I find it interesting that you say it's more common to higher or highly developed souls, and I don't know if mediums are highly or more developed or whatever. We're definitely in tune, but I feel like I've met several in my lifetime, and that weird sense of synchronicity and timing and empath and telepathy and empathic ability and telepathy and definitely a recognition, but none of them have been intended to be a more permanent fixture. And I thought about that. I thought, well, how many lives have we lived? How many lives have we lived? Of course, we had many lovers and many connections. And who's to say it's going to occur in this lifetime? Anyway, like what? It's so short. Like this is such a short stint when you look at things from an eternal perspective.
Of course, it's true. But the thing is, I think that what meeting a twin flame is all about, and really, if you have to think, Tracy, that we really only ever have one twin. I mean, we can only ever have one twin. We may get a near twin, but
so maybe they're more at the soulmate.
Yes, there may be, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes we plump for soulmate because our twin flame is simply not on the right page. They haven't developed as quickly as we have in terms of,
Debbie, we're coming up to the half hour here. If you want to find Debbie, she's at Debbie Nagyoff at .co.uk, and if you'd like to listen to this or other episodes, you can find me at mediumtracylockwood.com. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. Welcome back. If you tuned in a little late and you'd like to listen to the first half of this broadcast about soulmates and looking at them from an astrologer's perspective, you can find it on YouTube on my station at Medium Tracey Lockwood. The station is actually Tracey Lockwood Psychic Reading Medium. I'm trying to get that changed. It's just unwieldy. So just go to YouTube and put in Medium Tracey Lockwood. You'll find it. Or on my website, I'll have it up within about a week. At mediumtracylockwood.com. So we were talking with Debbie Maya, a clairvoyant medium and astrologer. We're in the midst of a discussion about soulmates and twin flames here. Right before the break, we were discussing the differences. Welcome back, Debbie.
Hello, I'm here again.
Yeah.
Yes. So where we don't quite hook up with our twin is simply because we're not quite on the same spiritual page, and I think that's where you have to think and there is a heck of a lot of acceptance that has to go on here. You have to accept that person cannot see things in quite the same way as you're seeing them, because they're not developed enough. And I always say to them, it's like, you can't force a baby to walk. Babies walk at, when they're ready to. You can't force them because your friend's kid is walking at 8 months. You can't force it. And it's the same with twin flames. You cannot force somebody to see what they cannot see. And also, Tracey, it's from my experience, it's not just about the twin flame connection, the relationship, such as it is. It's also what happens to you as a result of that connection, which the path that it pushes you on. People have said to me, I met this guy, and then all of a sudden they become terribly interested in soulmates, twin flames, spiritual work, and all of it. But I find not everybody chooses to have the astrological add-on to looking at that.
Yes. I wanted you just, if you will, before I definitely want to get into some of your personal experiences and client stories. But before that, tell us, you've identified some astrological aspects that indicate that type of a relationship. And other than something that I think is called synastry, because I'm not an astrologer, could you explain to our listeners and just explain it in layman's terms so that they can follow?
Okay, I'll do my very best. Well, in layman's terms, when you meet people, you can connect with them on various different levels. Either you find you have a great communicative rapport and you can have a good laugh, or you find that it's a sexual connection, you fancy them, or it's you just love them as a friend. You may not necessarily have that sexual thing going on. When I use my astrology, first of all, I set up charts. I use a very good website actually called astro.com.
Oh, it is great. Astro.com for you listeners out there. ASTRO.com. Wonderful site.
Yeah, it's a wonderful site because, in the old days, and I used to set up charts from scratch, and I had to get log tables out, and I'm not a great mathematician, but anyway, hey-ho, this takes the strain out of it, and you set up the charts, you look at the charts, you can tell from the chart that person's latent ability to have healthy relationships. You can tell from the chart the experience of them as a child, and their weaknesses and their strengths, their challenges, their gifts, all these kind of things come into play. When you put them together with somebody else, you can find that, yes, they connect on a communicative level, but they may be sexually very incompatible. You can tell all kinds of things. You can tell when I look at the charts, I'm not reading them as I used to read them as, this equals this equals that.
Right. Which a layperson could do.
Which a layperson could do.
This is the reason that an astrologer that is professional would be helpful.
Yes, yes. I'm looking at it in a combination of that and psychically. And,
Yes.
and you can feel those energies from the charts. One thing I look out for astrologically is the cross aspects from one chart to the other of Saturn, which is the Saturn that sort of is the planet that kind of allows longevity in a relationship, whether the aspects are challenging or that they're easy.
I always think of Saturn as kind of the disciplinarian, as
Oh, absolutely. Yes, the
like
old
the
folks.
boundaries and the rules and the
Yes,
lessons.
the Klingon planet that doesn't let people go. It's
Right.
somebody that just doesn't. And these connections with Saturn are very karmic. I mean, and likewise I found with
Oh,
Pluto.
interesting. Yes.
Pluto also, is the great transformer. These cross aspects with Pluto make the relationship very, what's the word? Fascinating, and you just can't. You're just taken in by them, and
Is
totally.
Pluto the one that rules addiction also?
Very well, very likely. Yes, I've not looked at it that way, but it's one of the furthest planets away.
Yes.
Discovered around about the
I might be thinking of
1930s.
Neptune. I'm not going to comment any
Neptune, you're
further on
fine.
planets.
No, stay out of it. No.
Stay out. I'll intuit everything.
No, you're right. Neptune is the one. It's one of those slow moving planets, and it's the kind of, as you say, and the planet, it can rule addictions of some kind because it's very nebulous. So yes, I find that it adds an extra to look at charts. It does add an extra layer to the reading. I can tune into
So
the
you look at you said the cross aspects of Saturn,
cross
like
aspects. This,
comparatively,
yes,
how one
comparatively.
person's Saturn and the other person's Saturn are operating in their chart, or what is that?
It's how the Saturn from one chart is aspecting the planets in the other chart, and
Okay.
the ascendant, which is the sign that was on the eastern horizon when we were born. And likewise, you do it the other way. And if you find that really if I see that there really are no Saturn connections, whether they're easy ones or challenging ones, I really don't feel that the relationship has got it's not going to have a long shelf life, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And also with Pluto pushes us towards somebody, that person becomes fascinating, or that other person with Pluto, if it's Pluto's negatively aspecting, can be very bossy and controlling.
Mm.
Uh, but I've certainly seen. I mean, it's all very well to have the nice aspects between the sun and the moon and all that, which is very, is very, very useful.
Basic and
Yes,
useful. Yes.
useful, and the Venus, Mars, and all the rest of it. But certainly, if you're looking at a synastry and there's no Saturn, then I really don't think it's going to last the course. It's got to have that Saturn to sort of tie it all up together. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You've written several books, um,
Yeah.
and I believe the one that is most focused on this aspect would be Familiar Strangers. Am I
Yes,
correct?
that's right. That is right.
I love the cover of the book. For those of you listening, it's like, or I don't know if you've changed it, but the one that I've seen has like a round table with
That's
all these people sitting around, sort of like a council, and there's light in the center, and the table is comprised of the zodiac, the astrological chart. And it's
that's
sort of,
right. Yeah.
I thought, what a profound illustration for what.
Thank you very much. It was done by a friend of mine called Steve Kite, who does all my covers for me, and I just thought that the colours and everything were really great, And I'm thinking about another book, and
Tell us.
probably taking. I don't know yet. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be taking it maybe a step further with the soul connections and the astrology, and looking at it in greater depth. But I'll keep that one under my hat, as they
Very
say.
good, very good. Well, how you said that you've had some, well, I know through your clients, but perhaps even personally, you've had some experiences with soulmate slash twin flame. Tell us some stories for a bit.
Yeah. The twin flame was somebody I worked with a long time ago that turned up again, and it had a profound impact. And it is there's still a contact, but I managed to work through it, not without a good deal of pain and
I can hear that.
acceptance. Yes, not without a deal of pain and acceptance. And I think really, if you are going to write a book on twin flames, you should have at least experienced it yourself.
Yes.
It's no good saying, no good writing it with a kind of a theory about it. You really need to have felt it and come out the other end.
Well, and
Uh,
I'm sure that that lends a great deal of compassion in your readings to
and
other people
yes,
too.
yes. I think what's interesting when tuning into soulmate connections is that being a bit of a history buff myself. It's very interesting to tune into how people were connected in past lives, and where they were, and all kinds of things like that. I was invited some years ago to do a psychic party, a psychic birthday party, and I was giving a reading to the hostess's sister,
Mhm.
and I was tuning into her, her relationship with her husband, and all was well. And then as I tuned in, and I saw her at the court of Henry VIII with
Mhm.
him, and she was a lady in waiting, and he was a courtier, and I could see that they had had a love affair then. And afterwards, when I'd finished, going into details, because a lot of it I've kind of forgotten, but I do remember that particularly. She said to me that the Tudor period in history was one of her most favourite periods. I think it is with a lot of people
Yes,
because,
I think yes, I think if we've had a past life, we have a resonance with that time frame,
yeah,
either a resonance that can be positive or negative because of our
yes, yeah,
experience within that
yeah,
thing. And I was just thinking, past lives we often focus on like how did we die, but that's not that's there's so much more, and there are a lot of strengths as well as weaknesses in past lives too. When you I wanted to ask you, just because I'm
sure,
curious,
yeah,
when, I know it's natural because as you open up and do readings, then like me, you'll
yeah,
find that past life connection. But did you? I know that you also do past life regression, which I
yes,
find interesting too. So
yes.
that goes beyond just the intuitive reading, or one. I don't know if you can measure which is more important. But did you do? Did you get into past life regression after encountering situations that involved past lives in your reading?
Yes,
I
yes.
wondered. I thought so.
I
Yes.
also read Dr. Brian Weiss's book, Only Love is Real. I don't know if you've come across him or you
I
know.
have, yes, I've heard of it. I regretfully do not get to read a lot of other people's
Oh,
things,
it's a
but
wonderful read. It's a
what
wonderful
was the
read.
title of it? Brian
It's
Weiss?
by Dr. Brian Weiss, Weiss or Weiss. I don't know how you
Mhm.
pronounce it. Um, he um, is a therapist. I think he was a psychiatrist or psychotherapist. I'm not sure. I'm showing my ignorance here, but
Oh, it's okay.
he wrote a book about the experience, his clients' experiences of going back in past lives.
Oh, and what was the name of it again?
It was called Only Love is Real.
Yes, Only Love is Real.
I really highly recommend
That,
it.
yes, thank you. I think you're actually the second person to recommend that book to me, so I guess it's time to
Yeah,
pick up
it's
and flip
it's
some
not long. It's
pages.
not a long book. It's not a long book, but it particularly focuses on two of his clients, two separate clients. Both of them had got didn't know each other. Should I tell you the story, or should I? I don't want to spoil
Let's
it
leave
for.
it. No, let's leave
Let's.
it because I
Yes.
know that you had in mind something to share with our listeners, and the time is just flying through the show. I wish it
It
were a
is.
2 hour show.
Yeah.
Anyway, tell me what you had in store for our listeners as far as maybe
What, developing mediumship?
anything, any
Okay.
aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the way I developed mediumship to the College of Psychic Studies, which is in London, it's just behind the Albert Hall, actually. It's a lovely, very smart part of London, South Kensington.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and a lot of sort of Regency buildings and all that. Um, we always started off with a meditation. And through the meditation, we would then open our psychic centers, our chakras, beginning. I mean, some people start at the top with the crown chakra. My teacher, Robin Winbow, he was called, he always started with the base chakra and opened up the base, the spleen, the the gut. I can't remember what you call
I
that.
call it the
That
gut too.
yeah, the gut,
Solar plexus, I guess.
solar plexus, and
Yeah.
then up through the heart, through the throat chakra, up through the third eye, and then the crown. Once you open up this, it's like a whole sort of column, and you bring your energies up through here, and then it is a great way to open up the senses. To it heightens people's senses, and we were then asked what we got. We did a number of some people developed that way. They developed healing powers, or they healing abilities came
Yeah, I'm
through
very
stronger.
interested in trance healing. That's my new topic of
Oh,
curiosity for me. Yes. Hmm.
yeah, and I developed more in the sort of mediumship way, and I think the thing about mediumship, I think, and it's a great rule of thumb for everybody, for all beginners and everything, you should really just give what you get. Don't hold back. It may sound totally crazy to you what you're giving to that other person, but you mustn't hold back, because if you start holding back, thinking, oh no, that can't possibly, that doesn't make sense, you then start holding back, and then you don't develop. You've just got to give it and give yourself up to it. That person, what's that person going to do? They can either say, yes, I don't understand it, or they'll say, yes, I understand what you're saying, because with mediumship, we're often shown symbols and things. And I can remember in those early days when I was developing mediumship, we used to work one-on-one with other students who were there. And I remember giving information to this girl, and I think she was from Holland or somewhere. And she said, well, how do you know what? I had connected with an aunt in spirit, one of her aunts, and she says, "Can you describe this aunt?" And for some reason, in my mind's eye, I got the picture. It was like a little, like photograph snap in my third eye of a woman with one leg. So I gave it to her. I thought, you know what, just give it. If it
It
sounds
takes
crazy,
courage. It takes
it takes,
courage to
you
speak
have
up.
to, but you
Yes.
have to, because if you don't and you hold back, you don't develop. You prevent yourself from developing. So I said, all I can tell you is that this woman's got one leg. And she immediately gasped, and she said, oh my God, yes, I know exactly who that is. So you see, that's very definitive. That's
Yes, it is. And I think our left brain doesn't understand what we're getting in our subconscious. So that's why we question it. But it
Yeah.
does make sense to your client. And even if it doesn't initially make sense to the person that's listening, they may get it later.
They may get it later, and it's certainly true of names that float into the aura, because I get that a lot, and some of these names don't mean anything to that person at the time, and I say to them, look, just hold on to it, because spirit have a way, because I always use the analogy that spirit are like on the top of a double-decker bus that we get in London. They can see much further up the road than we
Yes,
can. We're kind of on the lower deck, so we can only see so far, but they're on the upper deck, so they can see much further up the road. And so they
absolutely.
see things that we can have no concept of. I can remember when I worked in the city of London, I used to work in the legal world, and I'd given a reading to a girl who had asked me to give her a reading, and she recorded it and everything. This was probably in the 90s. And she wasn't easy to read for. Some people, I'm sure you find, Tracy,
Mhm.
that some people are much easier to read for. Their energies are a lot lighter. Other people's,
More
they're
resistant. Yeah.
more resistant.
Oh,
And
Debbie, I am terribly sorry. I just feel like I've dropped a hatchet, but we're at the end of our show. I can't
to be
believe it.
continued.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to reach Debbie Maya, you can find her under her pen name, her website, Debbie Nagioff. It's Nagioff for the Nagioff.co.uk, or at her email, debbiemaya@yahoo.com. We appreciate your joining us.
Yahoo.co.uk.
Co.uk. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And everyone out there, we'll see you next week for a view of life from a medium's perspective. And remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing. Again, if you would like to find me, you can find me at mediumtracylockwood.com, or friend me on Facebook at Psychic Medium Tracey Lockwood. I will see you next week for a view of life from a medium's perspective. And remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.